Jack had spent most of his life in the busy, noisy city. He had always felt like something was missing, but he could never put his finger on it. The days were filled with the hum of traffic, the constant chatter of people, and the endless rush of life. He was tired, mentally and physically drained, so one day he made a decision that would change everything. He packed up his things, sold his apartment, and drove out to the countryside, hoping to find the peace he had been longing for. His destination was a rundown farm he had bought, hoping to restore it and start fresh. The property had been abandoned for years, and from the photos he had seen online, it was clear that it would need a lot of work. But that was part of the charm for Jack. He wasn't afraid of hard work. In fact, he relished the idea of restoring something old and making it new again. He imagined waking up to the sounds of birds chirping, the smell of fresh hay in the air, and the peace that only nature could bring. It was exactly what he needed. After hours of driving through winding country roads, Jack finally arrived at the farm. It was more than he had expected. The barn, which he had seen in the photos, was even bigger than it looked, and the house, though worn down, had potential. But the real surprise was the farm's location. It was secluded, far from the nearest town and surrounded by thick trees and fields of tall grass. It felt like a world of its own. As he stepped out of his truck, Jack breathed in the fresh air. It smelled different out here, cleaner, fresher, almost as if the air itself had a certain purity. For a moment, he simply stood there, taking it all in. The silence was almost deafening. No cars honking, no people talking, just the quiet rustle of leaves and the distant call of a bird. It was exactly what he had been searching for. After taking a quick look around, Jack started unloading his things. He wasn't planning to do much work today, just unpack and get a feel for the place. As he moved a box from his truck to the front porch, he noticed something strange. There was a movement in the field behind the house. At first, he thought it was just a trick of the light, but then he saw it again. 3 figures walking through the tall grass. They were women. He blinked, unsure of what he was seeing. The women were far away, but they were moving with purpose, walking in his direction. Jack paused for a moment, not sure what to make of it. He had done some research before moving in and knew there weren't any other houses around for miles. So who were these women? Curious, he set the box down and walked towards the back of the property. As he got closer, he realized that the women were already nearing the house. They seemed to have noticed him too, and when they saw Jack, they stopped and watched him for a moment. The first woman was tall, with long dark hair and a confident stance. The second woman was shorter, with bright blonde hair that caught the sunlight, and the third was in between, with fiery red hair that looked almost out of place in the natural surroundings. Jack felt his heart race as he realized they were not strangers. They were already here, living on the farm. They didn't look surprised or startled by his presence. In fact, they seemed calm, even welcoming. It was as though they had been expecting him. "Hey there!" Jack called out, trying to break the awkward silence. The tall woman, who appeared to be the leader of the group, smiled and walked up to him. She extended her hand. "You must be Jack. We've been waiting for you." Jack shook her hand, still processing what was happening. "Waiting for me? I didn't know anyone was living here." The woman chuckled softly. "We've been living here for some time now. It's a good place, quiet, peaceful." Jack blinked in surprise. "But this is my farm. I just bought it." The woman's smile didn't falter. "Yes, we know. But we've made this place our home. It's not like we have a lease or anything. It's just, we've been here and we've made it work." Jack felt a wave of confusion wash over him. He had no idea how to respond. He had come out here for a fresh start, and now it seemed like his dream was already being complicated by these unexpected visitors. "Why don't you come inside?" "I'm Emma," the woman said, motioning for Jack to follow her. Jack stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. He had never imagined this kind of situation, but he couldn't deny his curiosity. "All right, Emma, I guess I'd like to understand what's going on here." As they walked towards the house, Emma introduced him to the other 2 women. The blonde one was Lily and the redhead was Sarah. Each of them gave him a polite nod, though there was a strange sense of reserve in their eyes. Inside the house, Jack saw the stark contrast between the old, decaying exterior and the surprisingly cozy interior. The living room was warm, with a fire crackling in the fireplace. There were handmade rugs on the floor, and the furniture, though old, looked comfortable. The entire space had a lived-in feel, as if these women had made it their own in a way that Jack could never have imagined. I wasn't expecting this, Jack admitted, taking in the scene. I thought the place would be falling apart. Lily, the blonde one, laughed. It's a lot of work, but we've managed. We take care of it together. Jack nodded, still trying to wrap his head around the fact that these 3 women had been living on his farm for who knows how long. He felt a little out of place, like an intruder in his own home. But as the evening went on, he couldn't deny the strange connection he felt with them. They seemed at ease with each other, their bond clear. And despite his initial shock, Jack couldn't help but wonder what their story was. The night grew darker, and the warmth of the fire filled the room. They talked mostly about the farm, but Jack could feel that there was more to their story. But for now, they kept their secrets to themselves. Jack didn't press them for answers. He was too intrigued, too captivated by the women and the mystery surrounding their presence. As the night wore on, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Why were they here? And why had they welcomed him so easily? There was more to this farm and to these women than he could possibly understand. But one thing was for sure. Life on this farm was never going to be as simple as he had imagined. The next morning, Jack woke up to the sound of birds chirping and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind. The room was still warm from the fire, and for a moment he thought maybe everything that had happened the day before was just a strange dream. But when he looked around, he saw the same familiar wooden beams of the farmhouse, and the memory of the 3 women who had greeted him the previous day came rushing back. He got out of bed and stretched, still trying to make sense of the situation. He had come here to start a new life, to escape the chaos of the city, but now it felt like his plans were already derailed. He had never expected to share the farm with 3 women, especially not ones who had been living there long before he arrived. After a quick breakfast, Jack decided to go outside. He needed some fresh air and time to think. As he stepped onto the porch, he saw Emma walking towards him, carrying a basket of freshly picked herbs. She smiled as she approached him, her dark hair flowing in the breeze. "Good morning, Jack," she greeted him warmly. "Did you sleep well?" Jack nodded, though he wasn't entirely sure what to say. "Yeah, I did. It's quiet out here. That's the beauty of it," Emma replied. "The farm has a way of helping people find peace. But you have to put in the work, too." Jack looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean by that?" Emma hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words. "Living out here isn't always as peaceful as it seems. There's more to this farm than meets the eye." Jack was curious now. He had already sensed that there was something strange about the place, but hearing Emma say it out loud made him realize that the farm held secrets, ones that no one had yet shared with him. "What kind of secrets?" Jack asked, his voice low. Emma glanced around to make sure no one else was near, then motioned for Jack to follow her. She led him to the far side of the property, where the fields seemed endless and the trees stood like silent guardians. The farther they walked, the more isolated it felt, as if they were entering a different world. "Sarah and Lily," Emma began, her voice barely a whisper. "They've been here longer than I have. This place, it's not just a farm. It's connected to something old, something that's been here for centuries." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. He had already suspected that there was more to the farm than just its physical appearance, but hearing Emma confirm it made his heart race. "What do you mean by something old?" Emma stopped and turned to face him, her eyes serious. "There are stories. Stories about this land being cursed, about people who lived here before us. The ones who owned this place, they had dark connections to the land. They made deals that aren't easily broken, and now we're the ones who have to live with the consequences." Jack didn't know how to respond. He had heard rumors about old properties and the strange things that sometimes happened on them, but he hadn't expected to hear something like this. The more Emma spoke, the more he realized that there were things happening on this farm that no one had warned him about. "So, what are you saying?" Jack asked. "That this farm is haunted?" Emma shook her head. "It's not ghosts we're dealing with. It's something much worse. Something alive. The farm has a power of its own, and those who lived here before us understood it. But they didn't know how to control it, and now we're trying to keep it at bay." Jack looked around, suddenly feeling very small in the vast expanse of the farm. The trees, the fields, the old barn, it all felt different now. It was no longer a peaceful escape, but a place that held something dark and dangerous. "Why didn't you tell me this yesterday?" Jack asked, his voice rising in frustration. "I wanted to. Emma replied, her gaze softening. But it's not something you just tell anyone. You needed to see it for yourself. And now that you're here, I can't just pretend like everything's normal. The farm doesn't let people come and go without consequences. Jack was silent for a moment, processing what Emma had said. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air, and he realized that the decision he had made to leave the city and start fresh had led him into something much bigger than he had anticipated. We've been living here, trying to figure it out, Emma continued. But it's hard. There are times when the land feels like it's alive and it doesn't want us here. That's when the bad things happen. Jack frowned, confused. What kind of bad things? Emma looked down, her expression troubled. Strange accidents. Things that shouldn't happen but do. People get hurt. Animals disappear. And sometimes we feel like we're being watched, even when we're alone. The air felt thick with tension as Jack tried to take it all in. This wasn't what he had signed up for. He had come here looking for peace, but instead he had found himself in the middle of something far more complicated and unsettling. I didn't know, Jack said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. I had no idea this place was like this. Emma nodded as if she had expected him to react this way. None of us did. But now that you're here, we're all in this together, and it's up to us to figure out how to break the curse. Jack stood there, staring out over the fields, trying to make sense of everything Emma had told him. He wanted to run, to pack his things and leave, but something held him back. There was a part of him that still wanted to believe in the beauty of this place, that it could still be the peaceful haven he had dreamed of. We'll figure this out, Emma said, breaking his thoughts. But we need your help. If we're going to make it work, we all have to stick together. We can't do it alone. Jack turned to her, his heart racing. He had no idea what he was getting into, but one thing was clear. His life on this farm was never going to be simple. He was now part of something bigger, something that had been set in motion long before he arrived. And whether he liked it or not, he was in it now, bound to the land and the women who had made it their home. As they walked back to the house, Jack felt a sense of unease settle in his chest. The farm, once a symbol of freedom and new beginnings, now felt like a prison, one that held secrets, dangers, and a dark history that was slowly beginning to reveal itself. As the days passed, Jack found himself growing more and more immersed in the strange and mysterious world of the farm. It was not at all what he had expected. What was meant to be a fresh start had quickly turned into something far more complicated. The farm felt like it was alive, almost as if it had a pulse of its own, and that pulse seemed to beat louder each day. Despite the unsettling feeling that lingered, Jack couldn't deny that there was something about the place that kept him there, a pull that he couldn't explain. He spent most of his days working alongside Emma, Lily, and Sarah. They worked together to repair the barn, mend fences, and clear the overgrown paths. It wasn't just hard work, it was therapeutic. Jack found comfort in the rhythm of the work, in the feeling of doing something productive, even though a part of him still felt like he was living in a dream. The sense of isolation, the quiet stillness of the land, and the way the women seemed so comfortable here, it all felt like he had stepped into a story that had already been written long before his arrival. But as the days went on, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that there were things happening behind the scenes. Things that the women weren't telling him. There were moments, small and seemingly insignificant, that made him question his place in this strange new life. He'd hear whispers late at night, voices that seemed to come from nowhere, and sometimes he'd feel a presence watching him, though he was sure he was alone. The animals on the farm, once docile and peaceful, began to behave strangely. The horses would neigh anxiously, and the chickens would scatter at odd times. And then there were the dreams. Every night, without fail, Jack would have the same dream. He'd be standing in the field, the wind howling around him, and in the distance he'd see the barn. It was always the barn, and in the dream the barn wasn't old and broken down like it was during the day. It was new, pristine, and shining with a strange ethereal light. He would walk toward it, drawn to it as if something was calling him, but as he got closer, the door would open and a dark shadow would emerge. He could never see its face, but he knew it was watching him. The dream would always end with the shadow reaching out for him, and just as its cold hand would touch his skin, Jack would wake up, drenched in sweat. At first, he thought it was just the stress of moving to a new place, the uncertainty of the situation, or the isolation getting to him. But as the days turned into weeks, the dreams became more vivid, more real. They felt like warnings, like the farm was trying to tell him something. One evening, as the sun began to set, Jack found himself in the barn alone. The women had gone into town to get supplies, and he had decided to stay behind, thinking he might finally get some work done. The barn smelled of wood and hay, and there was a strange stillness in the air. As Jack moved around, fixing the roof and checking the beams, he noticed something odd. One of the walls seemed to have been disturbed. There was a section of it that didn't quite match the rest of the barn, as if someone had patched it up hastily. His curiosity got the better of him, and he moved closer to inspect it. He reached out and touched the wall. It was cold, colder than the rest of the barn, and as his fingers brushed against it, he felt a slight vibration. His heart raced as he pushed against the wall, and to his shock, a small door creaked open. It was hidden so well that Jack hadn't even noticed it before. His breath caught in his throat. What was behind this door? He hesitated for a moment, wondering if he should wait for the women. But the temptation was too strong. With a deep breath, he stepped through the door, finding himself in a narrow, dimly lit hallway. The walls were covered in old peeling wallpaper, and the air smelled musty. It was as if no one had been here for years. Jack's curiosity led him down the hallway, and at the end he found another door. This one was locked, but the keyhole was big enough for him to see inside. He pressed his eye against it, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Inside the room there was a large wooden chest. It was ancient, covered in dust and cobwebs, but it was the strange symbols carved into its surface that caught his attention. They were like nothing Jack had ever seen before. The symbols seemed to glow faintly, as if they were alive, pulsing with an energy he couldn't explain. The moment he looked at them, a chill ran through his body. He stepped back, unsure of what to do. Before he could gather his thoughts, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around quickly, and there stood Emma, Sarah, and Lily. They were all looking at him with expressions that were a mix of surprise and something else, something that Jack couldn't quite place. "You shouldn't be here," Emma said softly, her voice full of concern. Jack felt a wave of confusion wash over him. "Why, what is this place?" Lily stepped forward, her face serious. "It's not something you're supposed to see." "Not yet. Why not?" Jack pressed. "What's going on here?" The women exchanged uneasy glances. Emma finally spoke. "This farm, it's not just land. It's a gateway, a doorway to something we can't control." Jack's mind raced. A doorway to what? "What are you talking about?" Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. "We didn't choose this. The farm chose us. We thought we could escape it, but it's always been here, waiting for the right people." Jack was stunned. He had come here to escape, to find peace. But now he was trapped in a story he didn't understand, with no way out. The farm, the women, the dreams, it was all part of something much bigger than he had imagined. "You need to leave," Emma said urgently. "You don't belong here. The farm is not safe. Not anymore." Jack's mind was spinning, and he felt like he was drowning in a sea of confusion. But as the women's words sank in, he realized that he was already too deep. There was no turning back now. "Is there any way out?" Jack asked, his voice shaky. Lily looked at him with sorrow in her eyes. "We're all bound to this place, Jack, and now so are you." The words hit Jack harder than he expected. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He was part of this strange, twisted world. The farm had claimed him, and there was no escape. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack stood there facing the women, knowing that his life would never be the same. The farm had a hold on him now, and the only question left was what it wanted from him. Jack spent the next few days in a haze, struggling to make sense of everything that had been happening on the farm. His mind kept returning to the hidden door in the barn, the strange symbols, and the unsettling conversation with the women. He had always thought that a fresh start meant peace and quiet, but now he felt like he had stepped into something much darker. It was as if the farm itself was alive, and its secrets were slowly unfolding before him, one piece at a time. Despite Emma's warning to stay away from the hidden room, Jack couldn't shake his curiosity. Every time he walked past the barn, he felt an inexplicable pull toward that door. It was as if something inside was calling to him, urging him to uncover the truth. He knew the women were hiding something, but he didn't know if they were trying to protect him or if they were simply too afraid to confront the reality of what was happening. One evening, when the sun was setting and the air grew cooler, Jack made up his mind. He couldn't ignore the feeling any longer. He had to know what was behind that door, even if it meant risking everything. He waited until the women had gone into town for supplies, then quietly made his way to the barn. The path was quiet, the only sound being the soft crunch of leaves beneath his boots. As he reached the barn, his heart raced. He hesitated for a moment, but then he stepped inside, the smell of wood and hay filling his nostrils. The barn was just as it had been before, old and worn, but there was a sense of stillness about it that made everything feel slightly eerie. Jack moved toward the hidden door, his footsteps echoing in the silence. He reached out and touched the cold hidden section of the wall, and again he felt that faint vibration, like the wall itself was alive. He pushed against it and the door creaked open once more. This time Jack wasn't going to hesitate. He stepped through the narrow doorway and found himself in the same dark hallway he had seen before. The musty smell lingered in the air, and the walls seemed to close in around him. He took a deep breath and continued down the hall, determined to find answers. At the end of the hallway, the door to the hidden room stood just as it had the first time. The strange symbols still glowed faintly, and Jack could feel a strange energy radiating from them. He stood there for a moment staring at the symbols, trying to make sense of what they meant. Were they part of some ancient ritual? Had the farm always been cursed, or was it something the women had brought with them? His thoughts were interrupted when he heard a faint creak behind him. Jack spun around, his heart leaping in his chest. But when he turned, he saw no one. The hallway was empty, just as it had been before. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't alone, that something was watching him from the shadows. Shaking off the feeling, Jack approached the locked door once again. He reached for the keyhole, pressing his eye against it to look inside. This time he could see more clearly. The chest inside the room looked even older than it had in his previous dream, and the symbols on it seemed to pulse with an eerie light. But now Jack could see something else, something moving inside the chest. It was faint at first, but then it became clearer. A shadow. A figure. It was shifting inside the chest as if something was trying to get out. Jack's breath caught in his throat, and a cold sweat began to form on his brow. He had to get out of there. This wasn't just a mystery, it was something far more dangerous. But before he could turn to leave, the door to the hidden room creaked open on its own. Jack froze. The room was darker than before, and the air felt colder, almost suffocating. He could hear faint whispers, but he couldn't make out the words. The shadow inside the chest seemed to be growing stronger, moving more violently now. Jack had never been one to back down from a challenge, but this felt different. This wasn't something he could fix with hard work or determination. This was something far beyond his understanding. With a burst of courage, Jack stepped into the room, his eyes fixed on the chest. As he moved closer, the whispers grew louder, more urgent. He reached for the chest, but before he could touch it, a cold hand grabbed his wrist. Jack's body froze, his heart pounding in his chest. He turned, and standing in the doorway was Sarah. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. She looked like she had seen a ghost. "Jack, no," she whispered, her voice shaking. "You can't open it. You don't know what's inside." Jack pulled his wrist away from her grasp. "I have to know, Sarah, this place, it's not what it seems." "I need to understand." Sarah stepped forward, her eyes pleading. "You don't understand, Jack, none of us do. But we're trying to keep it contained, to keep it from spreading." "What is it?" Jack demanded, his voice rising. "What's in that chest? Why is everyone so afraid of it?" Sarah hesitated, and for the first time, Jack saw real fear in her eyes. "It's not a thing, Jack, it's a curse. A power that has been tied to this farm for generations. The people who owned it before us made a terrible deal, and now we're the ones paying the price." Jack took a step back, his mind racing. "A curse? A deal?" None of this made sense. Sarah continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "The farm was built on something ancient, something powerful. And when the old owners made their deal, they tied that power to the land. The chest holds the key to releasing it, but once it's released, there's no going back. It'll consume everything." Jack looked at her, his heart racing. "Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you warn me?" "I tried," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "But it's too dangerous. We thought we could keep it contained, but now that you're here, the farm is trying to claim you too. It knows when a new soul arrives. It wants you, Jack." Jack felt a chill run through him as her words sank in. The farm wanted him? He was already trapped in its grip, whether he liked it or not. Before Jack could respond, Emma and Lily appeared in the doorway, their faces grim. "Sarah's right," Emma said softly. "You shouldn't have come here, Jack. We've tried to keep the curse at bay, but it's stronger than we thought. And now that you're involved, it's only a matter of time before it comes for you. Jack felt a wave of despair wash over him. He had come here looking for a fresh start, for peace. But now he was caught in the middle of something he couldn't control. The farm, the curse, the mysterious women. It was all too much. But as he looked at Sarah, Emma, and Lily, he realized that they were just as trapped as he was. They had all been drawn to this place, whether by choice or by fate, and now they had to face whatever came next together. "I don't know how to stop this," Jack said quietly, his voice shaking with uncertainty. "But we have to try. We can't just let it consume us." The women nodded in agreement, their eyes filled with the same mixture of fear and determination. They had no choice but to face the curse head-on. And Jack, though he had no idea what he was getting into, knew that he had no other option but to stand with them. Together, they would have to find a way to break the curse or be consumed by it. The air grew colder as Jack, Sarah, Emma, and Lily stood together in the dimly lit room. The shadows cast by the flickering light of the barn's lantern seemed to stretch and twist, almost as if they had a life of their own. It felt as though the walls of the barn were closing in, trapping them in a place they couldn't escape. The weight of the curse hung over them, and for the first time Jack realized that this wasn't just about him anymore. He wasn't alone in this fight. The women had been living with this burden for longer than he could imagine, and now that he had stumbled into their world, he had to find a way to make it right, or risk losing everything. "We can't just stand here," Jack said, his voice low but steady. "We have to figure out how to stop this. If the farm wants me, we can't give in to it." Sarah looked at him, her eyes filled with both fear and a strange determination. "The farm doesn't just want you, Jack, it wants all of us. It feeds on us, on our fears, our regrets, and our desires. It manipulates us, makes us believe that we have control when we don't. But there's a way to stop it. There's always a way." Jack's heart raced as he listened to her words. He wasn't sure he believed her, but there was something in her voice that made him feel like this wasn't hopeless. Maybe there was a way to fight back. Maybe they weren't just stuck here, doomed to the farm's curse forever. "But how do we stop it?" Jack asked, his voice tense. "You've been here for years. How do we break the cycle?" Emma stepped forward, her face pale but resolute. "The answer is in the chest. We have to destroy it." Jack blinked, confused. "Destroy it? What's inside? What is the chest holding?" "It's not what's inside," Emma replied. "It's what the chest represents. The power it holds is what keeps the farm alive, what keeps the curse going. It's a link to the past, to the people who made the deal with the land, and as long as the chest exists, the farm will continue to feed off us." Lily, who had been silent up until now, spoke softly. "We've tried to destroy it before, but every time we've gotten close, something stops us. The farm fights back. The closer we get to breaking the curse, the stronger it becomes." Jack felt his stomach tighten. The idea of destroying the chest seemed impossible. If it was truly as powerful as they said, how could they possibly succeed where others had failed? "We can't just give up," Jack said, shaking his head. "We have to find a way. There has to be a weakness." Sarah's gaze softened and she stepped closer to him. "There is one weakness," she said quietly. "The chest draws its power from the land. If we sever the connection between the land and the chest, we can destroy its power. But we can't do it alone. We need to work together." Jack thought about her words, trying to wrap his mind around what they meant. Sever the connection? How could they do that? It sounded too simple, too impossible. "I don't understand," Jack said. "How do we sever the connection? What do we have to do?" Lily spoke up then, her voice more certain than before. "We have to use the land's own energy against it. The farm is tied to the earth itself. The old owners made a pact with the land, and the chest was the key. But the land also has its own will, its own spirit. If we can tap into that power, we can turn it against the curse." Jack felt a surge of hope. It sounded like a long shot, but if there was any chance to free themselves, they had to try. "And how do we tap into this power?" Sarah's expression was serious. "The only way to access the land's power is through a ritual that has been passed down for generations. We need to gather the ingredients, perform the ceremony, and break the bond between the chest and the land." Jack looked at the women, unsure of what to say. He was beginning to understand the gravity of their situation. They weren't just trying to destroy a cursed object. They were trying to break an ancient, powerful bond that had held the land and its people captive for centuries. And now Jack was caught in the middle of it all. "Where do we start?" Jack asked, determination growing in his chest. "What do we need?" Emma smiled faintly. First, we need to gather three things. The first is the soil from the oldest part of the farm. The second is water from the stream that runs through the land. And the third is a token, something that represents the connection we have to the land. Lily nodded in agreement. Once we have everything, we perform the ritual at the heart of the farm at the barn. That's where the chest power is strongest. If we do it right, we can break the curse once and for all. Jack felt a surge of adrenaline. He was ready. Ready to fight, ready to end this madness. He had come to this farm seeking peace, but now he would leave with something far more valuable. The strength to fight for his freedom, for his life, and for the lives of the women who had become his unexpected allies. The next few hours were a blur of activity. Jack, Sarah, Emma, and Lily moved quickly but quietly around the farm, gathering the items they needed for the ritual. Jack was surprised at how well they worked together, their movements synchronized as if they had done this 1,000 times before. The soil was taken from a small grove of ancient trees deep in the woods, the water from the stream near the edge of the property, and the token, a simple stone, was found in the barn, hidden in a small alcove. As the sun began to set, the air around them grew thicker, heavier with anticipation. Jack's heart raced as they made their way back to the barn, the ritual about to begin. He could feel the weight of everything pressing down on him, but he didn't back away. This was it, the moment of truth. Inside the barn, the chest stood as it had before, dark and menacing. The symbols on its surface seemed to glow even brighter now, as if it sensed what was about to happen. Emma, Lily, and Sarah formed a circle around the chest, each holding one of the items they had gathered. Jack joined them, his hand steady as he held the stone. Sarah spoke first, her voice low and clear. "We call upon the power of the land, of the earth, to break the bond that has held us captive for so long. We ask for your strength, for your will to sever the curse that binds us to this place." Emma continued, her voice matching Sarah's in tone. "We give ourselves to you, to the earth, to the land. We offer our souls, our bodies, and our hearts. We ask that you break the bond, that you free us from the curse that has tormented us." Finally, Lily spoke, her words like a chant. "We sever the connection, and with it we break the power of the chest. We ask for release, for freedom. Let the curse be undone." The room seemed to hum with energy, the air thick with power. Jack could feel the ground beneath him tremble, and the barn creaked as if it were alive. The chest shook violently, and for a moment Jack thought it might explode. But then a bright light flashed from the chest, blinding him for a moment. When the light faded, everything was still. The barn was quiet. The air felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. The curse, the dark force that had been holding them captive, was gone. Jack let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. It was over. The women looked at him, their faces filled with relief. They had done it. They had broken the curse. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jack stood there, feeling a sense of peace he had never known. The farm was free, and so were they.